It was a crisp autumn morning when I witnessed the moment that would forever change my perspective on aging and independence. My neighbor, Mrs. Anderson, a vibrant woman in her late 70s who had always prided herself on being self-reliant, was stepping out of her house to fetch a newspaper. The sun cast long shadows across her porch, and the air smelled faintly of fallen leaves. But as she reached for the first step down from her doorway, something went terribly wrong. Her foot hesitated midair, trembling slightly before it missed the edge entirely. With a sharp cry, she tumbled forward onto the concrete path below. The sound of her body hitting the ground echoed through the quiet neighborhood like a thunderclap. I rushed over, heart pounding, only to find her sprawled awkwardly, clutching her leg with tears streaming down her face. "I can't move," she whispered hoarsely, panic flickering in her eyes. What started as an ordinary morning quickly spiraled into chaos. Paramedics arrived within minutes, their flashing lights slicing through the calm suburban scene. They carefully loaded Mrs. Anderson into the ambulance, but not before confirming what we all feared. Her hip was fractured. What followed was nothing short of devastating. Weeks turned into months as Mrs. Anderson lay bedridden in the hospital, her once active life reduced to sterile white walls and the constant beep of medical machines. Surgery repaired her broken bones, but recovery proved far more treacherous than anyone anticipated. Complications arose. Pneumonia set in due to prolonged immobility, and muscle atrophy began its cruel work almost immediately. Each day seemed to sap a little more of her spirit, leaving behind a shadow of the woman she used to be. But perhaps the worst part wasn't physical, it was emotional. Mrs. Anderson, who had spent decades raising a family, volunteering at church, and mentoring younger neighbors, now found herself utterly dependent on others. Her children took turns visiting, juggling work and caregiving responsibilities, while guilt gnawed at them for not doing enough. She often muttered under her breath about feeling like a burden or a ghost haunting her own home. It broke my heart to see someone so proud lose everything they held dear, not just mobility, but dignity itself. This harrowing experience left me shaken to my core. How could something as simple as climbing a single step lead to such catastrophic consequences? And yet, this story is far from unique. Every year, countless older adults face similar fates, their lives upended by falls that could have been prevented by need. The statistics are staggering. 1 in 4 seniors will fall each year, and these falls account for nearly 3 million emergency room visits annually. For many, a fall isn't just an accident. It's the beginning of the end, marking the transition from independence to reliance. As I watched Mrs. Anderson struggle, I realized how fragile our bodies truly are, and how much rests on the strength of our legs. Our legs aren't merely limbs, they're the foundation of our existence, carrying us through every stage of life. When they weaken, we don't just slow down, we risk losing control over our entire future. That thought terrified me. Would I someday face the same fate if I didn't take action? How? Could any of us afford to ignore the warning signs until it was too late? In that moment, I made a silent vow. I would do everything in my power to ensure no one else suffered as Mrs. Anderson did. This wasn't just about avoiding injury. It was about reclaiming agency over our lives, defying age, and refusing to let fear dictate our choices. Because here's the truth. Growing older doesn't mean giving up. It means fighting harder, smarter, and with purpose. And that fight begins where it matters most, with the strength of our legs. The statistics are alarming, and they hit close to home, literally. Did you know that nearly 40 of adults over the age of 65 experience some form of mobility impairment directly tied to weakened leg muscles? And among those, 1 in 3 will face severe disability within just 5 years if no action is taken. These numbers aren't abstract figures. They represent real lives, our neighbors, our parents, even ourselves. Anderson's fall wasn't an isolated incident. It was a stark reflection of what happens when we ignore the silent but relentless process known as sarcopenia. Sarcopenia, it sounds like something out of a dystopian novel, doesn't it? But this isn't fiction. It's a natural part of aging, yet its effects can feel catastrophic. Imagine your muscle mass as a fortress built over decades of activity, strength, and resilience. Now picture sarcopenia as a raging flood, slowly but surely eroding the foundation of that fortress. At first, the damage seems minimal, a slight wobble here, a bit of fatigue there. But over time, the floodwaters rise higher, swallowing chunks of your strength until one day you find yourself unable to do things you once took for granted. Climbing stairs becomes a Herculean task. Standing up from a chair feels like summiting Everest. Walking 10 steps, unthinkable. Let me share another story with you, one that haunts me to this day. Meet James, a former marathon runner who once prided himself on his endurance and speed. For years, he ran marathons across the globe, earning medals and admiration from peers. His legs were his pride, his power, his identity. But then came the gradual decline, a creeping weakness that started in his late 50s. At first, he dismissed it as just getting older. After all, everyone slows down eventually, right? Wrong. By the time James had turned 65, the flood of sarcopenia had washed away so much of his muscle mass that he could barely walk 10 steps without leaning heavily on a cane. The man who once ran 26.2 miles without breaking stride now struggled to shuffle across his living room floor. I remember visiting James shortly after he stopped running altogether. He sat slumped in his recliner, staring at the wall where photos of his races still hung, a cruel reminder of the life he'd lost. "It's not just my legs," he confessed, his voice trembling. "It's everything. I used to be someone people looked up to. Now I'm just helpless." His words cut deep because they echoed a truth many of us fear. Losing physical strength means losing more than mobility. It means losing pieces of ourselves. But why does sarcopenia target our legs first? Think about it. Your legs carry the entire weight of your body every single day. They're the workhorses of your anatomy, constantly under pressure, constantly in motion. When sarcopenia strikes, it hits these muscles hardest because they're the most used and therefore the most vulnerable. By the time you reach your 40s, you're already losing about 1% of your muscle mass each year. Once you hit your 60s, that rate doubles. Without intervention, the floodwaters of sarcopenia can sweep away decades of strength in what feels like the blink of an eye. Margaret's story, which I shared earlier, illustrates both the tragedy and the hope inherent in this process. She too faced the devastating impact of weakened legs, struggling to climb stairs and fearing she'd never regain her independence. Yet, unlike James, Margaret chose to fight back. She recognized the warning signs early enough to take action, incorporating nutrient-rich foods into her diet and committing to simple exercises. Her journey proves that while sarcopenia may be inevitable, its consequences aren't set in stone. With the right tools and mindset, we can fortify our foundations before the flood overwhelms us. Still, the question remains, how many of us or willing to confront this reality head on? How many of us will wait until it's too late, like James, or take proactive steps like Margaret? The choice is ours to make, but beware, procrastination comes at a steep cost. Every year we delay addressing muscle loss brings us closer to the brink of dependency, and once you cross that threshold, clawing your way back becomes exponentially harder. So let's talk about solutions. Not tomorrow, not next week, but today. Because the sooner you act, the better your chances of staying strong, mobile, and independent. In the following sections, I'll reveal specific strategies to combat sarcopenia and protect your legs from its devastating effects. But for now, I urge you to reflect on your own situation. Are you noticing subtle signs of weakness? Do everyday tasks feel slightly more challenging than they used to? If so, don't dismiss them as normal aging. This is your body sending up flares, warning you of the storm ahead. Will you heed the call? A. Fatty fish, the turning point of fear and triumph. Let me tell you about Sarah, a woman who nearly let fear dictate her fate. At 63, she had always avoided fatty fish like salmon or mackerel because the mere thought of their fishy smell made her stomach churn. But when her doctor handed her a list of foods to strengthen her legs, fatty fish topped the chart. For weeks, Sarah stared at that paper, paralyzed by indecision. She remembered how climbing stairs used to leave her breathless, her legs trembling as though they might give out under her weight. It wasn't just exhaustion, it was terror. What if one day she couldn't climb those stairs at all? Then came the moment of truth. One evening, after another grueling attempt to ascend her staircase ended with her gripping the railing for dear life, Sarah broke down in tears. Her son found her there, pale and shaking. He reminded her of the doctor's advice and gently urged her to try salmon, just once. Reluctantly, Sarah agreed. The first bite was an ordeal, the texture unfamiliar, the taste foreign. Yet something inside her whispered, "Keep going." And so she did. Within 3 weeks, Sarah noticed changes so profound they felt almost miraculous. Her morning walks became easier, not just longer, but faster. The burning sensation in her thighs during stair climbs? Gone. By week 6, she no longer needed to clutch the railing. Instead, she bounded up the steps with ease, her legs feeling stronger than they had in years. One sunny afternoon, she decided to jog around the block, an activity she hadn't dared attempt since her 50s. As her feet hit the pavement rhythmically, Sarah laughed aloud, tears streaming down her face. This wasn't just recovery, it was rebirth. The contrast between then and now is staggering. Before incorporating fatty fish into her diet, Sarah could barely shuffle across her living room without gasping for air. Now she runs errands on foot, dances at family gatherings, and even joined a local hiking group. Every step feels like defiance against time itself. Omega-3s truly are magic, working silently beneath the surface to rebuild what age tries to steal away. B. Dairy products, Robert's battle against despair. Now picture this. Robert, a 68-year-old retiree, sitting slumped in his recliner, hands gripping the armrests as he tried and failed to rise. His knees buckled beneath him, refusing to support his weight. Humiliation burned in his chest. Was this really how his golden years would unfold? Would he soon require a wheelchair to navigate through life? These thoughts haunted him daily, gnawing at his spirit until hope seemed like a distant memory. Robert's breaking point came during a visit from his granddaughter, Emily. She was only 10, full of energy and innocence. When she asked him to play catch in the backyard, Robert's heart sank. How could he explain that standing up from his chair felt harder than scaling a mountain? That night, as Emily slept over, Robert lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He knew he couldn't let weakness define him, not while his granddaughter still looked up to him. The next morning, armed with determination, Robert consulted his doctor again. This time he listened intently as the physician emphasized the importance of protein and calcium from dairy products. Skeptical but desperate, Robert committed to drinking a glass of milk every morning and having Greek yogurt each afternoon. At first, progress seemed non-existent. Days turned into weeks, and frustration lingered. But somewhere along the way, tiny victories began to accumulate. One fateful afternoon, 2 months into his new routine, Robert stood up from his chair without assistance. For the first time in years, tears welled in his eyes as he realized the significance of this small act. Over the following weeks, his strength surged. Climbing stairs no longer left him winded, and walking became second nature again. Soon he was taking brisk strolls around the neighborhood, waving proudly at neighbors who had watched his decline. When Emily returned for another visit, Robert surprised her by joining her in a game of tag. They ran and laughed together, sunlight dancing on their faces. In that moment, Robert understood that resilience isn't about never falling. It's about rising every time you do. Dairy didn't just save his legs, it saved his dignity. See, leafy greens, Linda's leap of faith. Imagine Linda, a 65-year-old grandmother, lying awake at night, her calves seized in painful cramps. No position offered relief, and sleep remained elusive. Her days were equally bleak. Simple tasks like folding laundry left her legs aching, and gardening, once her favorite pastime, now felt impossible. Physical therapy sessions brought little improvement, and despair crept closer with each passing day. During one particularly disheartening session, her therapist suggested adding leafy greens to her meals. Spinach, kale, collard greens, he listed off casually. Linda scoffed inwardly. Could a few leaves really make a difference? Still clinging to any shred of hope, she decided to give it a shot. The first few days were uninspiring. Kale salads tasted bland, and spinach smoothies required swallowing past a mental block. But Linda persisted, driven by desperation. Then, unexpectedly, transformation struck. After 3 weeks of religiously consuming leafy greens, Linda woke up one morning free of cramps. For the first time in months, her legs felt light, almost buoyant. Encouraged, she pushed herself further. A month later, she attended her granddaughter's yoga class, initially hesitant but eager to prove herself. To everyone's astonishment, including her own, she completed the entire session without faltering. That day marked a turning point. Linda embraced her newfound vitality with gusto. She started jogging lightly, experimented with Pilates, and even signed up for a dance workshop. Her friends marveled at her energy, often asking for her secret. With a smile, Linda would reply, "It's all about the greens." Looking back, Linda sees her journey not as a struggle, but as a revelation. Those leafy greens weren't just food. They were lifelines, pulling her back from the brink of surrender. Today, she stands tall, both literally and metaphorically, proof that sometimes the simplest solutions hold the greatest power. Let me take you deeper into the story of Margaret, the 72-year-old woman who once struggled to climb stairs and even gave up her cherished walks in the park. While she had started incorporating fatty fish and dairy into her diet, There was one hurdle she hadn't yet overcome, her decades-long habit of avoiding physical activity. Margaret wasn't alone in this battle. Many people find themselves trapped in a cycle of inertia as they age, believing that rest equals preservation. But for Margaret, this mindset nearly cost her dearly. For years, Margaret convinced herself that staying seated was safer than risking a fall during exercise. Why push myself when I can just relax, she'd tell her family. Yet every morning she woke up feeling heavier, as though an invisible weight pressed down on her legs. Her muscles felt stiff, like rusted hinges on a door that refused to swing open. Even simple tasks like bending down to tie her shoes or standing up from the couch left her breathless. One day, while attempting to carry groceries inside, she stumbled backward, barely catching herself against the counter. The fear in her eyes was palpable. It was then she realized inactivity wasn't protecting her. It was weakening her further. Determined to break free from this destructive pattern, Margaret began with small steps. Literally, she started walking around her living room during TV commercials, gradually increasing her time outdoors. At first, each step felt like dragging sandbags, but over weeks, something miraculous happened. Her legs grew lighter, her energy surged, and those dreaded stairs no longer seemed insurmountable. By committing to just 20 minutes of daily movement, Margaret reclaimed not only her strength, but also her confidence. Today, she jokes that her legs are stronger than they were in her 50s, a testament to the power of persistence. But physical activity isn't the only pillar of leg health. Hydration plays a critical role too, as Robert discovered the hard way. Remember him? The retiree whose life turned around after embracing dairy products. Despite his progress, Robert often neglected drinking enough water. He justified it by saying, "I'm not thirsty," unaware of the silent toll dehydration was taking on his body. Then came the day everything changed. It started innocently enough, a mild headache and a nagging fatigue that clung to him like a shadow. As the afternoon wore on, Robert found himself struggling to focus. Every step felt like trudging through quicksand. His calves burned with an inexplicable heaviness, and his knees wobbled under his weight. That evening, while reaching for a glass on the top shelf, his legs suddenly buckled. He collapsed to the floor, heart racing, panic gripping his chest. Though he escaped serious injury, the incident shook him to his core. Consulting his doctor revealed the culprit: chronic dehydration. Without adequate water, his muscles lacked the fluid balance needed to function properly, leaving them weak and prone to failure. From that moment forward, Robert vowed never to underestimate the importance of hydration again. A glass of water became his constant companion, and within days he noticed a profound difference. His movements felt smoother, his energy levels soared, and the burning sensation in his legs vanished completely. If Margaret fought inertia and Robert battled dehydration, then Linda's story underscores the vital role sleep plays in maintaining strong, healthy legs. For months, Linda, a devoted grandmother who recently rediscovered her love for leafy greens, had been sacrificing sleep to keep up with her busy schedule. Between volunteering at church, caring for her grandchildren, and attending yoga classes, she prided herself on being endlessly productive. What she didn't realize was that her relentless pace was silently eroding her strength. One fateful night, after skimping on sleep yet again, Linda woke abruptly to the sound of her alarm. Her head throbbed, her limbs felt sluggish, and her vision blurred slightly as she shuffled toward the bathroom. Halfway there, disaster struck. Her foot caught on the edge of a rug, and before she could react, she tumbled to the ground. Pain shot through her ankle, sharp and searing. Tears streamed down her face as she lay there, helpless, realizing the true cost of her exhaustion. A trip to the emergency room confirmed a sprained ankle and a stern warning from her physician. Your body repairs itself while you sleep. Ignore rest and you're inviting accidents. Linda took the advice to heart. She established a calming bedtime routine, swapping late-night scrolling for soothing herbal tea and quiet reading. Within weeks, the transformation was remarkable. Her legs felt steadier, her reflexes sharper, and her overall vitality renewed. The fall served as a wake-up call, not just for Linda, but for everyone who witnessed her ordeal. Sleep, it turns out, isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. During those precious hours of rest, your body rebuilds muscle tissue, restores balance, and prepares you for the challenges ahead. Neglect it, and you risk far more than grogginess. You gamble with your safety and independence. These stories illustrate how intertwined our daily habits are with the health of our legs. Movement keeps muscles engaged and joints supple. Hydration ensures proper function, and sleep allows for essential repair. Together, these practices form a powerful trifecta that supports not only our physical well-being, but also our emotional resilience. Margaret, Robert, and Linda each faced their own battles, yet all emerged stronger because they chose to act. Their journeys remind us that change doesn't require drastic measures. It begins with small, consistent actions. Whether it's a short walk, a glass of water, or an extra hour of sleep, every choice matters. And when paired with nutrient-rich foods like fatty fish, dairy, and leafy greens, these habits become even more impactful. So what will your first step be? Will you lace up your sneakers for a morning stroll, pour yourself a tall glass of water, or prioritize rest tonight? Whatever you decide, know this. Your legs are counting on you. They've carried you through life's greatest adventures. Now it's your turn to carry them. With determination and care, you can ensure they remain strong, steady, and ready for whatever lies ahead. The clock was ticking, and for Sarah, the realization hit like a thunderclap. Her journey from skepticism to transformation, fueled by fatty fish, dairy, leafy greens, and newfound daily habits, had been nothing short of miraculous. But it wasn't just about her anymore. One evening, as she watched her older brother Michael struggle to rise from the couch, she felt a pang of urgency. At 70, Michael had already resigned himself to his fate, convinced that weakness was an inevitable part of aging. "It's too late for me," he muttered, shaking his head when Sarah suggested he try the same changes she'd embraced. "No," Sarah said firmly, gripping his hand. "It's not too late. It's now or never." She recounted her own story, the initial resistance, the small steps, and the profound results. She told him about Margaret, who went from barely climbing stairs to dancing again. Robert, whose legs grew strong enough to walk miles after years of pain, and Linda, whose persistent cramps vanished thanks to leafy greens. Each story painted a vivid picture. Strength wasn't lost forever. It could be reclaimed, but only if action began immediately. Michael hesitated, his eyes clouded with doubt. "What if I fail?" he asked softly. Sarah leaned closer, her voice unwavering. "What if you don't? What if this is your chance to change everything?" That night, she sent him a detailed list of foods and habits, along with links to videos explaining sarcopenia and its effects. To her surprise, Michael texted her the next morning. I bought salmon and spinach today. Let's see where this goes. Weeks turned into months, and Michael's progress astonished everyone. He started walking around the block, then jogging lightly. His posture improved, his energy soared, and one day he proudly showed Sarah a photo of himself hiking, a feat he hadn't attempted in decades. The difference was staggering. Gone was the man who once shuffled through life, replaced by someone vibrant and full of purpose. Sarah couldn't help but reflect on how close Michael had come to missing this opportunity altogether. If she hadn't acted when she did, would he have accepted decline as his reality? This sense of urgency isn't unique to Sarah and Michael, it's universal. Every moment we delay taking care of our legs is a moment we edge closer to dependency. Consider James, the former marathon runner, whose refusal to adapt left him unable to take 10 steps without assistance, or Mrs. Anderson, whose single misstep led to a cascade of health issues that robbed her of independence. Their stories serve as stark reminders. Waiting until tomorrow often means losing today. On the flip side, imagine two elderly individuals sitting on a park bench. One leans heavily on a cane, struggling to shift positions without discomfort. Her legs are thin, her movements hesitant, and her gaze fixed on the ground. Beside her sits another woman, upright and radiant, tossing breadcrumbs to pigeons with ease. She rises effortlessly to adjust her scarf, then laughs warmly at a joke shared by a passing friend. Both women are the same age, yet their realities couldn't be more different. What separates them isn't genetics or luck, it's choice. One chose to act, while the other let time slip away. As Sarah reflected on these contrasting images, she realized how critical it was to share what she'd learned, not just with family, but with anyone willing to listen. So, she organized a small gathering at her home, inviting neighbors and friends over for coffee and conversation. On the table lay colorful plates of salmon salads, yogurt parfaits, and kale chips. As they ate, Sarah spoke passionately about the power of food, movement, hydration, and rest. She didn't preach, she simply shared her truth, weaving in stories of triumph and resilience. By the end of the afternoon, several guests promised to make changes. One neighbor, Evelyn, admitted she'd ignored leg weakness for years, assuming it was normal. Inspired by Sarah's words, she vowed to start incorporating leafy greens and stretching exercises into her routine. Another attendee, Tom, a retired teacher, decided to swap soda for water and take daily walks. These pledges might seem small, but Sarah knew better. Every decision mattered. Every step forward was a victory against the tide of decline. The message was clear: now or never. Tomorrow holds no guarantees, but today offers endless possibilities. Whether it's swapping processed snacks for nutrient-rich options, committing to a 10-minute walk, or simply drinking more water, every choice shapes the future. And the most powerful action of all, sharing this knowledge with others before it's too late. Sarah ended her gathering with a simple challenge. Tell one person what you've learned today. Spread the word, because every life we touch has the potential to transform countless others. As her guests departed, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing she'd planted seeds of hope and empowerment. And so the cycle continued. From Sarah to Michael, from Michael to Evelyn and Tom, the ripple effect spread far beyond what anyone could have imagined. Those who acted found strength, vitality, and freedom. Those who waited faced consequences far graver than mere inconvenience. The choice was, and always will be, ours to make. Will you rise to meet the challenge, or will you watch from the sidelines as life passes you by?